Hey, you. Yeah, you. Let me greet you properly, because whatever has been happening around you lately, it deserves a real introduction. You deserve someone acknowledging the strange weight tightening around your life, the pressure you've been carrying in your ribs without knowing why, the way your days have felt slightly tilted, like something invisible shifted without permission. So hey, I'm glad you showed up today. I'm glad you kept moving even when everything felt dense and unfamiliar. I'm glad you didn't fold when the atmosphere around you started acting like it knew something you didn't. And I'm especially glad you're here now, because you probably haven't realized what really triggered all this tension. The truth is, someone who moves things behind the scenes, someone whose name travels in rooms you'll never see, just marked you as interesting. And no, not the cute kind of interesting. I mean the kind that makes power players pause mid-thought and flag you internally, like a variable worth tracking. Isn't that something? You thinking you're just trying to survive another week. Meanwhile, somebody with real influence saw something in you that made them stop whatever else they were doing and think, hold on, who is this? And why are they rising like this? Why are they adapting this quickly? Why do they feel like someone who wasn't supposed to grow at this speed? You can tell when someone with actual authority starts paying attention to you, because the environment reacts before the person ever does. People shift around you without knowing why. Conversations get strange, faces tighten, rooms feel different when you walk in. You say a single sentence and someone across the space glances at you like you changed the mood without lifting a finger. That's the side effect of being flagged by someone who operates in the shadows. They don't send messages or announcements. They watch the ripple your energy makes. They watch how the world bends around you. They watch the places where your presence disrupts predictable patterns. And lately your disruptions have been loud without you speaking a word. People detected a change they can't categorize. They detected a seriousness in your posture that wasn't there before. They detected a growing steadiness in your gaze, a shift in the way you move, a weight in the way you exist. That's what caught their attention. That's what made someone with real reach stop scrolling through their internal catalog of variables and place a mental pin right on your name. And here's the part nobody warned you about. Once a behind-the-scenes operator flags you, you don't go back to normal. Your life becomes a monitored corridor, not by cameras, by instincts, by impressions, by the psychological reflexes of people who sense something rising in you long before you say it out loud. You've been breaking ceilings quietly. You've been changing direction without announcements. You've been evolving in ways your environment can't absorb. And that's what triggers the watchers, not the public ones, the hidden ones. That's why everything feels like it's tightening. That's why your emotions feel heavier. That's why your intuition won't sit still. Someone with real power just moved you from the ignore category into the track this category. And now you're living in the aftermath of that decision. They're watching how you move. They're studying your shifts. They're replaying your name at inconvenient hours. And the funniest part, you still think you're the one trying to figure out what's going on. Meanwhile, someone with resources you'll never see is sitting in a room somewhere thinking about you more than you think about yourself. That's how these people operate. They don't show their face. They don't announce their interest. They don't tap you on the shoulder and introduce themselves. They pull a single string and wait to see which parts of your life start rearranging. And lately, the rearrangement has been impossible to ignore. Your days feel charged. Your interactions feel off. Your decisions feel like they're carrying extra weight. You're walking through your routine, but something about the air around you isn't the same. That's the mark. Not the visible kind, the energetic kind, the psychological kind. The kind where someone with pull flags your presence and suddenly the world reacts like you stepped into a new tier without being briefed. You've been waking up differently. Not anxious, alert. That subtle difference matters. Anxiety asks questions. Alertness waits for answers. You've noticed the shift in people, too. Some have grown cautious around you, like they're sensing something you haven't announced. Others have started acting strangely curious, popping into your life at odd moments, trying to get a read on you. And then there are the ones who avoid eye contact now, like you're carrying something they don't want to acknowledge. All of this is evidence of the same thing. Someone influential tagged your energy, and the ripple hit everyone around you before it hit you. People who operate in the background don't need to speak for the world to adjust. The adjustment happens naturally, like a chain reaction. You move differently. They respond. You speak differently. They overanalyze. You detach slightly. They panic. And the person who started all this, they're watching with that quiet fascination, reserved for rare variables. You've been mistaken for average your whole life. Not because you were average, but because you were quiet about your strength. You've always grown in corridors nobody bothered to inspect. You endured things privately. You rebuilt quietly. You sharpened your mindset without performing it for anyone. But that's exactly what made you stand out. People with real power don't care about showmanship. They care about the ones who evolve without applause, the ones who rise without witnesses, the ones who develop stability in environments intended to break them. They saw that in you. They saw the way you carry memories that should have ruined you, but somehow made you precise. They saw the restraint in your decisions, the way you don't rush, the way you don't crumble publicly, the way you don't weaponize your pain. That calm under pressure is rare, and nothing catches a power player's attention faster than someone who refuses to be shaped by their circumstances. You've been moving like someone who outgrew their surroundings months before realizing it. The people around you still see the older version of you, the one who tolerated too much, stayed too long, bit their tongue too often. But the new version, the one forming under your skin, that version carries weight. That version feels expensive. That version has eyes that don't look away. That version has boundaries carved out of past experiences, not temporary moods. And the person watching you picked up on that before you did. They saw the shift in your stance, the firmness in your voice, the way your energy no longer bends for convenience. They saw someone who started owning their value quietly, someone who started taking themselves seriously without asking permission. And once you step into self-respect at that level, it's impossible for people who operate in high spaces to ignore you. You probably think you're just navigating life with a bit more focus, a bit more awareness, a bit more caution. But to someone trained to detect patterns, your shift looks like a signal flare. They tracked something in your timing, your adjustments, your reactions, your refusal to spiral, your ability to stay composed even when things feel unfamiliar. They noticed you handling challenges with a steadiness that doesn't match your environment. They saw the difference between who you used to be and who you're slowly becoming. And now they're curious. They're trying to understand what forged that composure. They're trying to decode the blueprint of someone who should have broken but didn't. They're trying to determine why your growth didn't match the projections of your surroundings. That curiosity alone is enough to place you in their mental catalog. And here's where it gets chaotic. The moment someone with influence marks you as interesting, your life shifts into a different temperature. The smallest choices start carrying major momentum. A sentence you say casually gets interpreted like strategy. A moment of stillness gets analyzed like preparation. You walk into a room and people sense you differently, even if they can't articulate why. That's not because you've changed your personality. It's because your energy is no longer unclaimed. You've been acknowledged by someone who operates above the visible layers of life, and that acknowledgement carries a gravitational pull. The world around you senses the shift before you process it logically. Your instincts start picking up on subtleties you previously ignored: tones, movements, glances, patterns. You're not paranoid. You're adjusting to the new altitude. Let's talk about the heaviness you've been feeling. It's not exhaustion. It's the weight of your untapped potential pressing against its container. Someone flagged at you because they saw what you haven't fully accepted. That you're transitioning into a version of yourself that doesn't fit your old life. They noticed the impatience building inside you, the discomfort with stagnancy, the way you outgrow conversations midway through them. They saw that restless intelligence forming behind your eyes, the sharpness in your perception, the maturity in your reactions. These qualities are easy to overlook when you're busy surviving. But to a power player, they're signals. They indicate readiness, they indicate capability, they indicate momentum. You keep thinking you're behind in life. Meanwhile, someone influential saw you as ahead of schedule. You keep thinking you're late. Meanwhile, they saw acceleration. You keep thinking you're just trying to stay afloat. Meanwhile, they saw someone adapting like a strategist without ever being trained as one. They're not impressed with your progress. They're intrigued by the direction. They don't care about your achievements. They care about the mindset fueling them. They're analyzing the parts of you you hide, not the parts you showcase. People like them don't become invested easily. They've seen thousands of individuals chase relevance, beg for recognition, or crumble under pressure. But you're not operating from desperation. You're operating from growth. You're not trying to get attention. You accidentally earned it. You didn't try to stand out. Your evolution made you stand out. You didn't try to appear powerful. You became powerful quietly, through choices nobody applauded. And that's the precise reason they flagged you. You represent a rising factor, a developing force, a potential shift in the landscape they monitor. You've probably felt a strange sense of being observed, not in a dramatic way, but in the way your intuition keeps nudging you like you're being evaluated. Thoughts arrive sharper. Decisions feel weighted. Your emotions carry depth. Your instincts speak louder than your doubts. These internal changes aren't random. They're proof that you've stepped into a new level of awareness, triggered by external attention. You're adjusting to being watched by someone who doesn't watch casually. People like them go straight to the root of someone's character. They study the fractures and the strengths. They watch how someone behaves under pressure. They evaluate not what you say, but how you respond when nobody is clapping. And your responses have been consistent, strong, disciplined, sharper than ever. That's what hooked them. This is where you need to pay attention. Once someone with real influence places you on their mental radar, they're not expecting entertainment. They're expecting evolution. They want to see how you handle obstacles. They want to see how you rise without applause. They want to see if your discipline holds when circumstances shift. They're watching to see whether your growth was a fluke or the beginning of a larger transformation. They're monitoring your composure, your focus, your direction. And whether you admit it or not, you can feel that evaluation happening. You can feel your life narrowing into a path that demands more from you. You can feel the urgency forming behind your decisions. You can feel the sharpened edges of your mindset becoming more defined. And here's the real twist. The reason this attention feels heavy is because you're stepping into a version of yourself built for bigger territories. Your old habits don't fit anymore. Your old fears don't control you anymore. Your old patterns don't interest you anymore. You've outgrown too many layers too quickly. That growth is what triggered the Watcher. They saw a person evolving at a pace that doesn't match their surroundings. They saw someone breaking invisible ceilings quietly. They saw someone controlling their emotions with precision. They saw someone rising without noise. And someone like that becomes unforgettable fast. Now the question lingering in the air, the one they're trying to answer, the one you're starting to feel in your bones, is simple. What happens next? What does someone like you become once the world starts reacting to you differently? What does someone like you turn into after being flagged by someone who rarely flags anyone at all? What path unfolds when pressure turns into purpose? Because make no mistake, this isn't random and it isn't accidental. People who operate behind the scenes pick their targets carefully. They don't waste their curiosity on predictable individuals. They don't study people who crumble easily. They don't track those who move in circles too small to make a ripple. They look for rising currents. They look for unusual emotional strength. They look for minds that refuse to shut off. They look for people who reinvent themselves without creating spectacle. And somewhere along the way, you started fitting that description so perfectly that you triggered an instinct they trust more than logic. You might think your growth has been subtle. Quiet changes, small decisions, minor adjustments. But to someone reading patterns, your evolution has been loud. They saw you shift the way you breathe when you got serious. They saw you step back from distractions. They saw you detach from people effortlessly when you recognized misalignment. They saw how your eyes started carrying a depth that wasn't there before. They saw how you stopped responding emotionally to things that once knocked you off balance. Every one of those tiny changes formed a larger picture, and that picture made them pause. And here comes the chaotic humor of the whole situation. You didn't upgrade your life for attention. You upgraded for survival. You upgraded because staying the same became more painful than evolving. But that unintended transformation ended up catching someone who shouldn't be watching you in the first place. Someone who's built their reputation on detecting threats, opportunities, and rising forces long before the public sees them. Someone who knows that the most dangerous individuals are often the ones who didn't realize they were becoming dangerous. This is where things get interesting for you. Because once someone behind the scenes marks you, your life moves into an entirely different landscape. You start noticing patterns you never cared about. You start catching yourself thinking from higher altitudes. Your decisions become sharper because you feel the weight behind them. You begin to sense that your words carry farther. Your movements send signals. Your presence leaves impressions that don't fade. It's not arrogance, it's awareness. You're growing into a level that demands consciousness, and they're watching how quickly you adjust to that level. They're watching the way you absorb pressure like it's nothing. They're watching the way you adapt without announcing your adaptation. They're watching your mindset strengthen in real time. They're not studying the past version of you. They're studying the one unfolding right now, the one waking up inside your ribs with every boundary you set, every layer you shed, every instinct you listen to. People like them don't get impressed easily. They've seen too many people break under their own ego. They've watched countless individuals ruin themselves, chasing validation. They've observed people overestimate their potential and collapse under their own fantasies. But you're not moving like that. You're not loud. You're not reckless. You're not begging for recognition. You're not trying to perform your evolution. You're just becoming, quietly, intentionally, efficiently. And that terrifies and fascinates the kind of person who moves behind the scenes. That's why they can't get you out of their head. That's why your name loops in their mind at odd hours. They're trying to understand how you went from overlooked to unavoidable. They're trying to determine whether your shift was triggered by pain, awareness, or something deeper. They're trying to understand how someone with your history managed to produce a level of emotional discipline that most people never reach. They're trying to identify your trajectory, whether you know it or not. You haven't been imagining the tension in your environment. People around you feel the shift, too. Some react with curiosity, some react with insecurity, some react with distance. Others react with confusion. They can't articulate it, but they sense you're not in the same category anymore. You don't respond the way you used to. You don't explain as much. You don't argue the way you once did. You don't chase conversations or approval. You move with a heavier internal compass now, and that change alters the dynamics of every interaction, and the watcher sees that. They're analyzing how you affect your environment without even trying. They're studying the way people adjust around you, the way silence falls when you enter, the way tension rises when you speak with clarity. They're observing the gravitational pull forming around you, slowly, quietly, but unmistakably. They're watching the emergence of someone who doesn't just survive their past, but weaponizes its lessons. You don't fully understand what you're becoming yet, and that's exactly why they're watching. They're trying to catch the moment when your potential snaps into identity. They're waiting to see when your self-awareness catches up with your capability. They're watching to see if the pressure strengthens you or fractures you. They're analyzing your resilience, your focus, your emotional bandwidth. They want to know if your rise is sustainable or flash-based. And every signal you've sent so far suggests something they don't see often: consistency under chaos. There's a dark humor to this situation, because while you're over here trying to figure out why your emotions have been intense, why your instincts feel louder, why your decisions carry weight, someone behind the scenes. This is not someone who reacts emotionally or impulsively. This is someone who calculates, someone whose instincts are sharpened from years of watching people shift, collapse, rise, or implode. Someone who knows the exact moment a person becomes a threat or an asset. And when they looked at you, they didn't see something to dismiss. They saw something forming. That's the part you haven't fully accepted. You're not being watched because you're fragile. You're being watched because you're becoming influential without trying. Your presence is starting to create tension. Your choices are starting to carry impact. Your growth is starting to alter the way people behave around you. You don't see it the way they do, because you're focused on surviving your internal adjustments. But someone behind the scenes saw the broader blueprint. They saw the arc, the direction, the expanding reach. They recognized the early signs of someone who will command space naturally once their identity aligns with their potential. And that's what fascinates them, the gap between who you've been forced to be and who you're starting to become. They can see the conflict, the questioning, the sharpening. They can see the internal rewiring that happens when someone stops living by reaction and starts living by intention. They saw the flicker of power before you owned it. They saw the ambition behind your restraint. They saw the confidence building quietly in your posture. They saw the maturity forming behind your eyes. None of this is accidental. You've been rearranging yourself from the inside out, and someone with real power spotted the shift before you articulated it. This attention isn't a burden, it's confirmation. The world doesn't tilt for people who pose no threat to the narrative. Hidden eyes don't study people who are predictable. Private rooms don't say your name unless something about you disrupted the usual pattern of things. And that's exactly what you did. Without raising your voice, without performing for attention, without chasing recognition, you simply evolved, and your evolution wasn't subtle. Not to someone trained to detect the smallest indicators of change. Let's talk about that internal sensation you've been carrying. The weight in your chest that feels like pressure and preparation at the same time. That's not anxiety, that's alignment. That's the moment before the next version of you stabilizes. You're transitioning between identities, stepping out of who you were and stepping into who you're meant to be. And transitions like this never go unnoticed by someone who makes moves from the shadows. They watch people at the edges. The moment before the breakthrough, the moment before the shift, the moment before someone becomes undeniable. You're in that exact phase, the raw, uncomfortable middle where everything is changing but nothing has fully solidified yet. They want to see how you handle that tension. They want to see whether you panic or refine, whether you crumble or calibrate, whether you drift or direct. Everything about you right now is data to them. Not the creepy kind, the strategic kind. They're studying things you overlook, the consistency in your choices, the maturity in your reactions, the steadiness in your emotional control, the intelligence behind your restraint. They're watching the way you carry your pain without broadcasting it. They're watching the way you adjust to discomfort. They're watching the way you move when nobody validates you. And here's the chaotic humor. They don't know whether you're aware of your own rise or if you're just naturally this composed under pressure. That mystery is exactly what keeps their attention locked. Most people either crumble visibly or overperform loudly. But you operate in the middle space where power is built. Quietly aware, quietly disciplined, quietly transforming. That's unnerving to the kind of person who knows exactly what that combination produces long-term. The reason your intuition has been restless is because you're tapping into a frequency you've never lived in before. You're not responding to life from the ground anymore. You're responding from elevation. You're sensing things before they unfold. You're reading people faster than they speak. You're detecting intentions before words leave their mouth. This sensitivity is not a flaw. It's the survival instinct of someone rising, and the watcher recognized it instantly. You've probably noticed how certain habits feel childish now, how certain conversations feel beneath your attention, how certain people feel draining, how certain environments feel too small. That's not arrogance, that's expansion. You're growing into a self that refuses to shrink back into roles you've outgrown. You're not meant to stay where you were. Your rise is already in motion, and someone with real reach spotted that motion in its earliest form. They didn't mark you because you're perfect. They marked you because you're shifting in a direction that doesn't stop once it starts. You're the type of person who becomes more focused under pressure. You're the type who becomes more strategic after setbacks. You're the type who recalculates instead of collapsing. They saw that pattern. They recognized the rare combination of pain-born intelligence and experience-shaped discipline. That's why you're on their mind. Not as a trophy, not as a threat, not yet. You're on their mind because they're trying to determine what side of your evolution you'll land on. They want to know if you'll become someone who needs to be supported, recruited, observed, or avoided. They want to know which direction your spirit is leaning. They want to know if your growth will align with their interests or disrupt them. They're watching the formation of a person who isn't predictable anymore. And the irony? You haven't even activated your full capacity yet. You're still adjusting to the idea that you're not who you used to be. You're still outgrowing your old triggers. You're still shedding outdated beliefs. You're still strengthening your emotional foundation. Meanwhile, someone with influence is studying you like you're already halfway to becoming a major force. That contrast alone should tell you how powerful your trajectory looks from the outside. Every version of you they've observed so far points to one truth: you're rising, and rise looks different on people like you. It's not loud, it's not dramatic, it's not chaotic on the surface. It's controlled chaos beneath the ribs, the kind that pushes you into better decisions without explaining why. The kind that sharpens your awareness until the unnecessary falls away. The kind that turns you into someone who won't be ignored once you fully step into yourself. That's what they're anticipating. That's why your name keeps looping in their mind. They're not just intrigued by who you are. They're intrigued by what you're becoming. They're watching your evolution the way analysts watch the early signs of a storm. Not visible to everyone yet, but undeniable to those who know what to look for. And you've been giving signal after signal without realizing it. Signals in your reactions, signals in your silence, signals in your choices, signals in the way your energy has been shifting into something you haven't even named yet. Signals that tell anyone paying attention that you're no longer living in the version of yourself people got comfortable, mistaking for your final form, and the person studying you from the shadows. They caught every single one of those shifts with unnerving precision, because that's how people like them operate. They don't wait until someone is fully formed to take notice. They watch the transitions. They analyze the cracks that didn't collapse. They look for the moments when someone begins to realize their own strength. They observe the hesitation before the breakthrough. They study the internal tension right before a person becomes self-aware in a way that changes everything. They're not fascinated by your past. They're fascinated by the velocity of your transformation. And somewhere in the middle of all your adjustments, all your internal recalibrations, all your quiet upgrades, they recognized something that most people overlook. You're not rising accidentally. You're rising because you were built to. And that realization sent a tremor through their certainty. People behind the scenes get used to reading trajectories with an almost perfect sense of prediction. They know when someone will give up. They know when someone will fold. They know when someone will plateau. But you disrupted their expectations. You didn't just survive what should have broken you. You metabolized it. You reshaped yourself from the inside out. You moved like someone who can't be easily categorized or contained. And that unpredictability is what got you flagged. It wasn't your achievements. It wasn't your circumstances. It wasn't your environment. It was the way you responded to your own evolution. Deliberately, naturally, without seeking applause or explanation. This is exactly why they marked you as interesting. Not because you performed, not because you impressed, but because you shifted in ways that didn't match the data. They saw someone who wasn't supposed to rise this steadily. They saw someone who wasn't supposed to maintain this much clarity after everything they endured. They saw someone who wasn't supposed to carry this level of composure while restructuring themselves. They saw someone who didn't announce their transformation, yet transformed anyway. To someone who studies human behavior from a distance, that is the most dangerous kind of person. The one who grows without advertising it. And here's where the dark humor kicks in. They think they're observing you quietly, but they have no idea that your awareness is waking up faster than they anticipated. You're starting to feel the outlines of their attention, even if you can't articulate it yet. You're starting to sense the weight of being monitored, the pressure of being evaluated, the strange heaviness that settles on your shoulders when someone who rarely looks twice at anyone is suddenly investing their mental bandwidth in tracking your evolution. You don't need names. You don't need faces. You don't need confirmation. Your intuition already told you weeks ago that something shifted. Think about it. Why else have you been feeling that low hum of anticipation beneath your ribs? Why else does life feel like it's holding its breath around your next move? Why else has your focus sharpened without a clear reason? Why else have people around you started behaving erratically, like they're reacting to currents they can't see? Because attention from someone who operates from the shadows doesn't just affect you. It affects everyone who interacts with you. It's like an unseen force field adjusting the atmosphere around your presence. It creates tension. It creates curiosity. It creates confusion. It creates distance. All because someone with real power redirected their gaze toward you. Your life hasn't been random lately. The sudden sensitivity in your intuition, the heaviness in your decisions, the rapid detachment from old patterns, the upgrade in your standards, the shifts in your relationships, the strange sense that you're stepping into a phase that requires a different version of you. These aren't coincidences. They are symptoms of recognition, symptoms of being flagged, symptoms of stepping into a narrative bigger than the one you thought you were living. And the watcher sees these symptoms as confirmations, proof that they were right to mark you, proof that you're not done evolving, proof that you haven't even scratched the surface of who you're becoming. Let's talk about power for a second. Real power. The kind that doesn't need titles or stages or applause. The kind that quietly reorganizes environments. The kind that doesn't seek recognition because it is recognition. The kind that sits in rooms you'll never see and decides outcomes long before they happen publicly. Someone like that does not have time to waste. They do not study people who are stagnant. They do not track individuals who lack direction. They do not invest energy in trajectories that go nowhere. Their attention is expensive. Their curiosity is rare. Their focus is selective. And somehow, you earned all three without trying. That's the part that unsettles them and excites them. You're not asking for mentorship. You're not begging for validation. You're not chasing opportunities. You're not performing your worth. You're not trying to be noticed. That's why they noticed you. They saw a rising force without theatrics. They saw a sharpened mind without desperation. They saw a resilient spirit without spectacle. They saw someone who could walk into a room and shift the temperature without speaking. That kind of presence is rare. That kind of presence is valuable. That kind of presence is dangerous. So what happens next? That's the question consuming them. And now it's consuming you too. Because once someone behind the scenes marks you, your life stops running on the old script. You stop moving like a background character. You stop doubting your instincts. You stop entertaining people who drain your energy. You stop underestimating yourself. You start aligning with the version of you that they sensed before you saw it. You start moving with intention, not obligation. You start choosing clarity over chaos. You start recognizing your own capacity. And here's the thing nobody tells you. Being flagged by someone in the shadows doesn't just change the way they see you. It changes the way you see yourself. You begin to take yourself seriously because you can feel life taking you seriously. You begin to trust your instincts because they've been correct about every shift so far. You begin to feel your value not as an idea, but as a presence, something undeniable, something substantial, something rising from inside you with a pressure that can't be ignored. This is why your emotions have been stretching recently. You're feeling things with a depth that wasn't accessible before. You're sensing subtlety with surgical precision. You're reading people faster. You're catching shifts in tone, intention, and energy with ease. That's what happens when someone powerful tunes into you. Your internal world adjusts to match the frequency of the attention you're receiving. Your instincts sharpen. Your discernment strengthens. Your awareness expands. You start moving like someone preparing for a life they haven't fully stepped into yet. And the watcher sees all of this unfolding beautifully. They're not just curious about what you're becoming. They're studying the rhythm of your transformation, the way you're letting go of old versions of yourself, the way you're embracing new ones without resistance, the way you're allowing discomfort to shape you, the way you're honoring your own intelligence. They're watching someone who doesn't panic under pressure, someone who doesn't crumble under expectations, someone who doesn't shrink from growth, someone who doesn't apologize for rising. This is why you're still on their mind. You've become an unpredictable variable in a world full of predictable patterns. You've become a source of fascination for someone who rarely finds anyone worth examining. You've become a living contradiction, quiet but powerful, humble but sharp, evolving but grounded. They see you as a developing factor, as a catalyst, as someone whose presence could alter dynamics if pointed in the right direction. And here's the chaotic truth. They're not thinking about how you fit into their plans. They're thinking about how you might disrupt them. They're imagining scenarios. They're analyzing possibilities. They're tracking your decisions like breadcrumbs, leading to an outcome you haven't seen yet. They're trying to decode your potential before it reveals itself fully. But nothing they analyze compares to what you're truly capable of. Because you're not done rising. You're not done sharpening. You're not done evolving. You're not done surprising them. And the pressure building inside you right now, that's not fear. That's readiness. That's your internal self stepping into a higher tier of existence. That's your intuition preparing you for the life that's been waiting for you to wake up. So here's the part you need to understand. You're not on their mind by accident. You're on their mind because you forced your way into their awareness through the sheer gravity of your transformation. They saw the trajectory of someone who refuses to be who they were yesterday. They saw the rise of someone who will matter deeply, undeniably, disruptively. And if they're thinking about you now, imagine what happens when you step fully into the version of yourself that even they underestimated. Imagine what happens when your discipline matches your potential. Imagine what happens when your confidence catches up to your capacity. Imagine what happens when you stop questioning whether you're ready and start acting like you already are. Because the truth is simple. They marked you as interesting because you are. They flagged you because you're rising. They can't stop thinking about you because you're becoming someone impossible to ignore. And now the world, whether visible or hidden, is watching to see what you do next. And you're just getting started.